I'm going to start sharing my screen, and we're going to move on to Module 3. And before we do that, if you haven't already done so, you'll want to log into your SNAC Dev account now. And let me know if anyone's having trouble with it. I didn't hear from anyone previously about logging into accounts, so let me know. I am going to turn off my camera. Okay, then officially, welcome to SNACSchool Module 3. This module contains instruction for creating and editing SNAC records, as well as developing source citations and using the cite function. At the end of each create example, I will instruct you on how to send your record for review. And for this installment of SNACSchool, I will be the reviewer. So we'll talk about how to send those review requests to me when the time comes. So the objectives for this module are, as you see on the screen, we're going to learn how to search SNAC to support our authority work. We're going to learn how to create a new SNAC record, learn how to edit an existing SNAC record, and we'll immediately realize that those two things really do overlap quite a bit in SNAC. You'll learn how to record your sources for SNAC records and how to use the cite function. And then, of course, finally, how to request review of your SNAC records. And again, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and log into your SNAC Dev user account and be prepared to move along as I move along with my examples with the names that you provided before we trained. Following the pattern that Jody set down in Module 2, we're going to start with corporate body name examples. As with all authority work, the first step in creating a new SNAC record means thoroughly searching the database to ensure that we don't duplicate an existing authority record. There are a few ways to do this in SNAC. The first is a standard search, the second is a browse search, and the third is an advanced search. And you see those demonstrated in examples here on the screen. When you've exhausted all searching options and still can't locate a SNAC record for your entity, it's time to start the create process. If you do find a matching entity or entities, there could be a couple, and we'll talk about that later on, then continue the steps for editing or perhaps merging existing SNAC records. Stay tuned for more about merge later in this module. When you've completed all of those searches, you'll be moving back to your editor's dashboard and going for the create new constellation. So as promised, I am back at my editor's dashboard. For the purpose of today's training, I will be using the examples that have been laid out in Module 2, and we'll be starting with the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory. Now, as Jody suggested earlier, it's a good idea to go ahead and have your finding aid open in a tab so you can make reference to it as you move through the process. So I already have up on one of my tabs the finding aid that I'm going to base all of my authority work for the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory on another tab. So I can just do some simple copy and paste. You will find after a while, and I found out immediately that astrophysical is not the easiest word to type over and over again. So that's going to be my example. And I'm going to run the basic search first, simply by pasting it in here. You can click search, but as you saw, once I entered the heading there, it sort of went ahead and tried to search for it, did try to search for it, and it found nothing. If SNAC finds through its simple search here on the left-hand side of the screen, it would start to list them here where you see quick search results. It would line them up, anything that it finds as a match. So I don't find it through that search. I'll then go to the browse search to try here. Now, you have here the option of filtering your searches to the entity types for person, corporate body, or family. I leave it as all types, and I'll explain why in a second. And again, I copy and paste. If you're familiar at all with using OCLC connection or WorldCat to do authority control, it might look familiar to you when you see that the closest match to our browse search, which is a basic, left to right alphabetical search, puts you at the middle of the results page. This was done intentionally so that users could see alphabetically what exists in the database above and below the entity name you're trying to search in the alphabetical run. So this, of course, search tells us that we do not have a match for Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory. The third type of searching I had mentioned is the advanced search. And you do go over to your search page, turn on all of these toggles, and run the additional another search there for the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory. Click search. And you might find, as it finds here, words, keywords that match your search but are not exact matches. So this tells us that Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory does not exist in the system at this time. When you know that it's not in there, move back to your editor's dashboard and click Create New Constellation. So again, go ahead. If you're, you should be moving through your own example, the example name that you provided. If you didn't provide an example name, go ahead and start doing any name of your corporate body name of your choice. And when the time comes, I'll give you advice on how to move through the process. On the basic information screen, you'll want to designate your entity type. This is going to be a corporate body name. Scroll down a bit to the name entries section and click Add Component. You assign the component by clicking the arrow here and scroll down to simply name. Again, this is a corporate body name that doesn't have the little tip-off words like division of, office of, department of. So this is going to be a straight direct entry with no subordinate. We are going to designate this as our preferred name. So click the toggle there to show preference as preferred. And in almost all steps you'll find in SNAC creation is designated the language and the script of the information found in the fields. Note, I clicked on the little magic wand icon. That makes it default to English and Latin. If you need a different language or a script, you can X that out and type in FRE for French, German is GRE, and so on. But we go ahead and make it easy because so many of them default to English. And then the script in Latin, if that's not your script, you can change it to Arabic or let's see, Hebrew, something along those lines. These, of course, are codes that come from the MARC standard language codes at the Library of Congress. The last thing you're going to do on this screen is add your rules, or your rule exact, to be specific. In the form, you will set this as your authorized form. Authorized equals preferred. And when we talk about variant names, we'll see the opposite of that. Your rule set, if you click here, sorry about that, you'll see AACR1, AACR2, and RDA. RDA is the choice that you will make every time. The other two standard content standard codes are in here to accommodate for very old authority data that was ingested into the system. So those are just placeholders. When we do SNAC record review, we only accept names that are presented or created in RDA. Scroll back up to your user actions and click continue. The reconciliation results is the next automatic step that SNAC will move you through. This is a one last attempt to determine if you are creating a duplicate name in SNAC, because again, you don't want to have duplicate entries. We've already seen some scroll by, and we'll be working on that later on. And now that I see that Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory is not in this list, I'm going to click Create New Constellation. And then you'll notice the change in the editing screen. I noticed during my research, while using my finding aid, that there is a variant form, at least one variant form for this, for this entity. It is oftentimes referred to as the SAO, the abbreviation or acronym for Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory. I've also found that if I search to do my research in a number of places, the Smithsonian website itself, trying to get to the Wikipedia, and here I see SAO, and that's one of our variants. So I just take a quick copy of that, and I move back to my editing screen, and to create a variant entry, I click Add New Name Entry, Add Component, Name, and SAO. Again, this is a variant, so I leave it as non-preferred, but the language is still English, the script is still Latin, and the rules here then are a bit different. This is an alternative form of the name, so alternative form equals not preferred, but our rule set is always RDA. And now that I've added that new variant name, I'm going to click Save. SNAC does not have an automatic save feature, so remember to save your work as you go. I'm going to hop back to my slides to catch up here. We've covered determining that we don't have a duplicate, the basic input of the preferred name, running the reconciliation process, and then entering a non-preferred or a variant version of the name. And then the reminder to save the record. So there are no rules directing the order for SNAC element input. You can enter them in any order you wish, from left to right, tab by tab, or you can enter them as you see fit. As you discover your information, you might discover biography and history information before you discover a variant name, and you are able to move through the tabs as you please. Do just what makes sense to you. In this demonstration, however, I am going to move from left to right through the tabs and top to bottom through the elements. So the next step in our corporate body name creation is going to be adding the history note. Again, as you can see, I have a clip out of the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory webpage, and this will be the source of our history note. Sorry about that. I have to remember that it's just in another tab. Okay. To do that, we're going to move to the History tab. On History tab, we have the elements for biog hist, exist dates, and places. I'm going to click on biog hist. And this is a simple XML editing screen. Simply click Edit to open the editing screen. Skip back over to your finding aid. And then take from it, copy and paste from it, the element of choice. Drop it in here. Note that in this particular case, the the historical information coming from the Smithsonian Finding Aid looks a bit more like a biography for a person. And in some cases, it might be a little bit of a mixture between the scope and content note too. But you can hop around. You see the collection overview and the historical note sort of cover the same information. So you may have to do some editing as you go. As you build your biography note or your history note, you can do simple XML tagging to create your paragraph breaks. And we'll see this more as we move into other examples that have longer notes. The exist dates is the next item down the tab. This entity still exists. Those are the dates of the records. And we want to get to the beginning of the story for the Astrophysical Observatory. And you can either find it in your finding aid, or you can go to a good source like Wikipedia and scroll through and see when exactly it was founded on March 1st, 1890. You can go back to your SNAC record with that information and add a new date. Notice that there is an add new date range, and that is if you have an established date and an abolished date. Here we have an abolished date of 1890, March 1. And save that information when you have it in there. Please note here that you have the option, but you're not required to do it, the option of adding a natural language date. Oops, sorry. But here you also want to assign the type, and that is establishment. And then the last thing I'll mention here is the descriptive note. A descriptive note is an area that you'll see presented numerous times throughout a SNAC record. This is a field where you can add information that you feel is important, but that doesn't have a home in any of the other designated fields. I'm going to save that. And then we're going to move down the history on the history tab down to places. This is what gives the context between an entity and a geographic location. We know from our research that the Astrophysical Observatory is located on the campus of Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So here, simply start typing Cambridge, and notice that it brings up several because there's more than one Cambridge, even around the United States, one in Texas, Maryland, New York, but the one from Massachusetts is the one we're going to select. The type is address, and you can start adding the address here. You're not obligated to add any of these elements. It's not required. However, the street address, the street And city and postal code are all sub-elements for the geographic place. So you have those options. It will also, once you've added the place name here in this line, it will also automatically generate a pin drop on a map. And we'll see how that plays out once the entire record is saved. Now, for corporate body names, I'm sorry, I'm going to save it one more time. For corporate body names, we move past the demographics tab, and we'll deal with the demographics tab once we get to our person name example later on in this module. Under the demographics are genders, nationalities, languages used, occupations, and subjects. There is a corporate description function or activities entry, and that comes later. So we're just going to skip over demographics for now, and we're going to move right on to the relations. Under the Relations tab, we have Resource Relations, and those are links to your descriptive resources, your finding aids, catalog records, and the like. There are also internal CPF relations and external related CPF relations. But let's work on the resource relations first. This element allows editors to link an archival resource description to the entity description in context. Remember from Module 2, this is one of the features that separates archival authority records from library authority records. Continuing with your example for the, or our example for the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory, we'll add the link for the finding aid we gathered from where we gathered our research. To get started on this element, simply click Add New Resource Relation. The first thing that SNAC wants you to do is search to see whether or not your finding aid is already included in the large cache of finding aid resources compiled earlier during the ingest. Now, it says resource URL or title. You have the option of searching either one. I reach up to the finding aid and I copy the URL and I paste it here and click the magnifying glass, and it confirms for me that this finding aid doesn't already exist in the SNAC resources cache. The next obvious step then is to create the new resource. Notice the change in the screen, because what we're doing is stepping away from the SNAC corporate body record create process just for a moment while we work to get our finding aid incorporated into the larger cache of resources in SNAC. Required at the very top, you will see resource type. Under resource type, you will find archival resource, bibliographic resource, digital archival resource, and oral history resource. We will be choosing archival resource here. And then the title is required. And we go back to our finding aid and find Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory records with the date and paste that there. You can refine this by bringing the sentence back together. SNAC does have capability behind the scenes for manipulating dates, so you can add those there. Notice that the resource link or the URL that we searched previously is automatically input here. And then you have the option of adding the other elements from the finding aid just to flesh out and give a better picture of the collection, but as it's described in this resource entry. You can go back and pick up your summary information, add that into the abstract. You can go back and add your quantity or your extent. And then again, Here's the magic wand ready for us to assign the language and script. Notice there's only one wand here, but it takes care of both your language code and your script code. And then the holding repository, which becomes very important in the whole discussion about contextual linking through SNAC, because this is not only going to contextually link the observatory to its own records in context, but it's also going to give us a context for where the records are stored and where they're served up. And this one, you simply start searching for Smithsonian Institution archives, because you notice that other holding repositories already designated are the Smithsonian American Art Museum, the Center for Folklife Programs and Culture Studies, and then Smithsonian Libraries. But Smithsonian Institution Archives is the holding repository for the observatory's collection. Once you've entered that there, scroll down just a bit more and click Continue. SNAC takes all of that information and summarizes it under the resource relations elements in the observatory's own SNAC record. The last step to cover here is assigning the role that describes that context between the observatory and its own records. And of course, here it would be creator of. And once that big step is done, I always like to save the record. So that's an example of how to add one. Note, please, of course, that you are at liberty to add as many finding aids as you want to. If this under the resource relations, you will notice if you look at other SNAC records in the system, there are in some cases hundreds of resource relations where either the system itself has linked names to finding aids or our SNAC editors have done that work. I want to move on now to internal CPF relations. I'm sorry, I'm pausing to change my glasses so I can see my writing. So again, different from library authority records, SNAC allows for linking CPF entities, so corporate bodies, persons, and families, in context. We'll link the Smithsonian Astrophysical Laboratory to an affiliated entity at Harvard University and to the Smithsonian scientists who worked at the laboratory. We document these relationships during our research, then make contextual links to other entities described in SNAC already. We've designated the relationship type as associated with for the Harvard College of Observatory based on our research, both from the Wikipedia article and from the finding aid. So to add a new internal CPF relation, click Add and do a search. And we're going to look for Harvard College Observatory. And you only really have to type portions of your name in before SNAC will go ahead and start looking for them for you. And at the very top is Harvard College Observatory. And we want to link these two together as having an association. There it is. It brings it back into the record for us. And here we assign associated with. Notice that the list of other relationship types, and we'll talk about a number of these along the way. Associated with is rather general, but you can again use the descriptive note here as a way of making things more clear if you need to. According also to our research, Charles Greeley Abbott was one of the founding scientist at the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory, and we want to include information about him in context with this entity because he already has his own SNAC record. So add new constellation. You have to highlight and back over that. And we're going to be looking for Charles Greeley Abbott. I'm sorry, I'm going to make sure I'm spelling it correctly. So I thought I would. There we go. And here we're going to assign a more specific contextual link, founded by. And then save. The last type of relation element on this list is external related CPF. This is the element that lets you connect your SNAC record, or authority record more specifically, to authority records outside of SNAC that also describe your entity. And these are those large traditional authority resources that Jody mentioned earlier: VIOF, or the Virtual International Authority File, Wikidata, and the Library of Congress Name Authority File. To build this external link, you'll start here with this screen. Notice that the URI bar is grayed out. SNAC will do that work for you. It's an alphabetical list of all the external authority sources that SNAC recognizes. And we're going to choose the Library of Congress NACO Name Authority File, is what it's called here. But what I need to do is find the authority ID from that particular authority record in the other system. I go up, I open a new tab for ID loc.gov. This is the Library of Congress's linked data service. Sorry, I'm going to make my screen a bit bigger. And you do a search for your entity. On the left, you can narrow these returns down to simply name authority. And I'm going to scroll down until I find the one that I know that I want. It matches the SNAC name, Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory. You might notice that when I first started, up at the top of the page, there was a different corporate body record that is not a full duplicate, but an old authority record at Library of Congress that we're not going to link to. Click into the Library of Congress name record, and up in the in the URL line, we need to take just the numerical section, the N and the numbers, copy it, take it back to our SNAC record and put it there. And notice that SNAC has built this URL for us. I'd like to save at this point. And we also know, of course, that there is a Wikipedia article for the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory, and that means there's a Wikidata entry for it. Over on the right-hand side of the Wikipedia article, you see Tools. Click there to bring that list down. Scroll down a bit, and at the very bottom, move to the Wikidata item. So here in the Wikidata entry, you'll find what I refer to as the Q code. The Q code is the important part of the link that we'll do, or that we'll use when we create an external link between the record in SNAC and the record in Wikipedia. make a copy of that, take it back, and create a new external related CPF. Choose the source. All the way at the bottom of the list is Wikidata, and then simply paste in the code there. Again, SNAC has built the link for us. Save that. And when we get to the point of looking at the public-facing version of this record on the SNAC front page, I'll show you the way that these external relationship links work. It's a very nifty tool. And again, it's something that doesn't happen in library authority records. Excuse me while I get caught up. We're going to move on to the corporate description tab. And again, the only element we cover on this one is activities. Activities help us further describe the corporate body name simply by describing its activities. This is also powered by a control vocabulary behind the scenes. Simply click Add New Activity and then begin to search for the headings or the subject activities you want to use to describe this. I will search for astrophysics. Oh, I thought it had astro. Sorry about that. Scientific research is one of its activities. And then generally research is one of its activities. Oops, I'm sorry about that. If you need to remove a heading that you've accidentally added, click the X. And then save. You have the option of adding as many of these activity headings as you wish. And now for the last big element for corporate body names is the sources. So click on the sources tab, and SNAC gives you a place to enter citations for the sources you consulted while building this SNAC record. One of the sources that we really highly recommend that everyone add is a citation to Wikipedia. I'm going to go back to that tab, go back to our article, and there we are. And I want to make a citation for this. So basically, the sources tab in the SNAC record builds a bibliography for all of the sources you use to find the supporting evidence for all of the assertions you've made throughout the SNAC record. Names, dates, geographic places, relationships to other entities, and your activities terms. So we found a lot of information from Wikipedia, so we will add a citation here. Note that the citation information is very straightforward. It's very basic. It looks a little bit like NACO source citations, if you're familiar with NACO work, but we do ask simply for the title of the source and the full date that you visited that source. In found data, it literally says what it means. It means what it says. You can go back to your source and clip out the information you would like to include in your found data. I oftentimes do an ellipses to show to anyone who reads this record in the future that this is basically what's there, and you will find more. Of course, if you really want to see everything that's in the article that supports or creates the supporting citation for the astrophysical observatory, it's going to be important to supply the link Simply copy and paste. And then, of course, there's our old friends, the language and script elements, magic wand, because that source is in English and in Latin script, and then save. Before we landed on the Wikipedia article, we saw that our search brought back a great bit of other information, including the Astrophysical Observatory's page on the Smithsonian websites. And we did pull a lot of information from there. Here's a good bit of information about the history. And this is another place where you could also copy and paste back into your history note if you choose. It's really very flexible from this point. You can take information from whatever source. But we definitely want to cite the fact that we visited this source and we want to add that to our SNAC record. So you go back to the record and add new source. Oops. Again, no need to reinvent wheels. You can copy and paste as you wish. Drop that information there. English and Latin, of course, but of course, one of the most important elements here is your link, and add that there in the URI line and save your record. You are at liberty to add as many sources as you feel are warranted. In the community of catalogers, especially those who do NACO authority cataloging, are told by their by their instructors at the Library of Congress, don't overdo it on your source citations. Only add the ones that you need to support information in your record. So once you feel you've satisfied that, you can stop. But please then observe, before we move away from this, we have two sources cited in our SNAC record for the Astrophysical Observatory. We have the Smithsonian webpage itself, and we have the Wikipedia article. This helps talk about the cite functionality. Sorry to do this, I'm going to hop over to my slides, and I'm going to catch up. And now we're at cite functionality. And this is a very interesting function in SNAC. It's not required, but it is there, and we like to make sure that everyone knows how to use it. As a part of delivering very specific information about entities into the larger mix of authority resources, SNAC decided to provide a way for doing data element entry source citations. And this can be done by simply clicking the green Cite button, generally on every element in the record. That was SNAC's mission there, was to create this sort of a line item citation. If we wish to give a specific citation for where we found this variant name, this SAO, we can add cite here and add a new citation and click on the citation select, and you will see that it's showing us the list of sources we've already cited on our sources tab. I believe that the SAO variant name was one that we found in the Wikipedia article. Click that there, and you'll notice that everything from that source citation on the sources tab gets populated into this sort of line item source. You've got the title, you've got the date of the citation and the link, and then of course the information we found there. Click done, and you're done. That it keeps that information behind the scenes, and it can be seen by other catalogers, other SNAC users, and editors in the future. Now, we've done quite a bit of editing. I'm going to save the record one more time. And we're going to talk about how to send you, now that this record is, for the most part, complete. We've added all the elements that are required to get us moving along. So I'm going to send the record for review. For the purposes of this installment of SNACSchool, you'll be sending all of your review requests to me, and I will review them and send back comments. To do that, we've saved the record one last time, and we like to send for review. You can send a message to your reviewer saying, "Hi, Jerry. This is a brand new record. Please do a full review." And then you'll search for your reviewer's name. My email is this. And then you'll click send for review. The reason why we provide a place to give a little shout out to your reviewer is that if you are treating or editing a SNAC record that's been in the system for a while and you've only made changes to a few of the data elements, you can tell your reviewer that, oh, I've only done changes to the biography note, and that way the reviewer can streamline the way that they review your record. So once you've sent a note, and it's not required, this is an option, find your reviewer and send it to that person. So it goes off into a message queue. Sorry about that's my other computer. And I see that folks are already sending their information in. Good to see. Your reviewer picks it up from the message center, opens it, and does review. Now, I have that record open, so it's only giving me a preview. It's important to know that you should leave your review records untouched until your reviewer has a chance to open them, give their comments, and send them back. If you should happen to open that record again, it takes it out of review mode and puts it into that preview, and then I can't make comments on it. So let me send them for review and then wait for my response. And that's how that works. This is a little email feature that's inside SNAC that we use the messaging center, but its real purpose for being is for the review work. And that's how that works. We can pause for questions here. I know that's a lot of information. And I see a lot of comments. I see 32 entries in the chat. So
I have a question.
yes.
I sent mine in for review, but then I want to make a change to it before you review it. Can I get back into it, or is it just like in your hands now?
You can certainly go ahead and open that record back up and make changes, and then save it and send it for review again. And I
Okay.
will see the most recent installment of the review request at the top.
Okay.
So that's fine. A lot of folks do that. Don't worry about it. I think it's one of the big pluses for SNAC, especially for the editing interface, is that it's a very relaxed, flexible system. There are not a lot of hard lockdown areas to it. Changes can always be made. And users are always afraid, oh no, I've made this huge error and I don't know what to do. And I'm afraid that I've messed something up. Really, there's nothing that can be truly messed up. It's data that I can fix from my side. I have a system administrator rights, so I can fix a lot of different things. Jody, I think, also has a high level of review and editing privileges. So not to worry, things can always be changed.
So follow-up question, when I do like click back into the record, it says it's a preview and I can't uh like edit it again.
Hold on just a second. This is the Piscataway Indian National Nation and Kayak
Yes.
Territory. Okay, hold on just a second.
Okay.
It's actually giving me the chance to review it. So what I'm going to do is not make anything except I'm just going to send it to the editor, and that means it's going to come back to you.
Okay. And I can pass
Then you
it to
can
you
go,
again.
yep, you can go into your message center and pick it back up.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there other questions?
I have a question. I guess it's mostly about like SNAC being used for discoverability for um, archival collections rather than as like an authority file. So if NIBSTA has um, digital surrogates of archival records that are housed in NARA, would that be confusing if we were trying to make SNAC records for an individual and like we're using our records and trying to connect those records, but they're actually duplicates of NARA records? Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense, and that's a great question.
Okay.
When Dina Herbert and I were officially working on SNAC as representatives for National Archives, we did that quite a bit. I think that I think we're talking about the extra layer of their. It's a copy. What's at NIBSTA is the copy of what's at the National Archives. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, and this is if we're talking about a corporate body name, just so I'm formulating my response.
I was thinking of an individual, just because, we have a lot of like superintendents of schools that we learn a lot about.
Absolutely. That is certainly possible. Now, what you have is the option of doing both. You can do both. You can link the person name record to the resource description at NIBSTA, and you can link it to the record at the National Archives. And there's the linking of course, there at the National Archives there are no finding aids per se. They're just catalog records, surrogate description records, and you can go into the National Archives catalog, find that record resource, and use the URL at the top for that specific catalog record to build in and use as the link instead of using the link to the finding aid. And if you want me to demonstrate that, I can certainly do it. Actually, I could do it when we go through the person name example in a few minutes. I can show you the way that that works. We'll be using the example for Fannie Lou Hamer, the one that Jody previewed in module 2, but she has stuff at the National Archives, so I can show you how that works.
Okay. Is there a way where we could like have a relationship between the NIBSTA collection and the NARA collection so that it's like sorry, that was a
But
confusing addition.
I don't have a really good quick answer for it. I would have to think about it.
Okay.
Yeah, give me. I'll think about it.
No worries.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay.
I was just going to chime in that I think in this case, River, I was just thinking, because we were talking about this earlier on another topic about like, for instance, photo collections that are held in multiple repositories, but they may be prints of, say, the same photos. And it seems like probably the best, I would think that the way to be linking would be, right, like by creating this network of those individuals in those photos, you would see that those individuals are linked in those photos, and those individuals also have relations to each other, and that those collections are then held at both places. So like you're kind of mapping out, like by making these kind of detailed entries in SNAC, you're sort of creating that relational map between, and right, in fact, like this is exactly the thing that like, if you go to the Cumberland Historical Society, aside from like a little note at the bottom that's like, check out the APS, like you might not know that those things are held and actually like represented in different ways in those two places. So I feel like by having the most robust set of relationships and places and like other SNAC entities related to those things, like that would help build that out in a way, rather than like, and so like, yeah, by doing that, you are actually linking those two resources that are held in different places, I guess. That's what I was thinking. I don't know if other folks here have thoughts about that. That was like what came up in my mind. And then also freedom to like not say anything that's said in the NARA finding, you know, like if you don't want to, right? Like you have the power to like decide what the representation looks like in this space. Yeah, Rachel, I see your question. Do you mean like that the quote unquote, like for instance, in the photographs case, like for instance, like are the negatives or is like the quote unquote original recording like somewhere? And would you denote that in like the record type or something, or like some other way?
I'll step in just to say that if you're, I would do that uh, when you're creating the resource link, where we did the resource relations about midway through the exercise, is that there are the descriptive note fields at the bottom, and if you feel it's necessary, you think it's valuable, certainly add a note there that says this is a link to what would be duplicates. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's actually very helpful.
I would think if it's not too much of a heavy lift, I would add both. I would add a resource relationship link to the copies at NIBSTA and then one to the original archival records at National Archives. I would just do both if it's not too much of a burden there. And then yes, I would add a note too. Add one. These are duplicates, and the other one, these are the originals, or linked to the originals. Digital archival resource. Scotty, thank you for asking that question. So we moved through those little picks when we were doing the example, and it's important to note that archival resource is the one that you will assign most. That's just sort of the straightforward traditional archival collection. That does really cover a lot. That covers papers, government records, any format, film, video, anything, sound recordings. It's all sort of pulled into archival resource. There is a choice for bibliographic resource. You will notice as you move through SNAC that you see links to bibliographic resources that are, of course, exactly what that says. They are links to descriptions of books, serials, mass publication type resources. And those are there because the technical build for SNAC and the ingest of data that happened back in 2000, 15, almost 10 years ago, pulled in so much information from the Library of Congress and from WorldCat at OCLC that it brought with it links to books and serials and other mass publication information associated with an entity, a person, corporate body, or a family. We don't encourage anyone to do any amount of bibliographic resource linking. We're really focused, that's sort of there in SNAC as a placeholder, to maintain the information that was originally there. We really do focus on and encourage people focus on archival resource, and then there's digital archival resource and oral history. Oral history is what it is. We know what that is. Digital archival resource is linking to your archival resources that are fully digitized and available online. And there are a number there, the possibilities there I think are endless. I could come up with several that I know, but like when you if you link to a collection of photographs, you're linking to the finding aid for that, and then knowing that those photographs are fully digitized and available online, you would assign the digital archival resource instead of just the archival resource. And I don't know if we have an example for that, but perhaps, but I can always demonstrate that too.
Well, just to follow up on that, can I just ask, so like the digital archival resource would be different than, say, for a photo collection, if there wasn't a digital exhibition that used material from that collection, that's not quite the same thing because it's not necessarily a finding aid.
Correct. That is not the same.
Okay.
It's not a finding aid. Thank you for answering your own question. So I was like, I was trying to formulate, oh, how am I going to answer that? I know what you're talking about because there are many instances where we've had SNAC users say, but only some of those things were used in an exhibit. And we're like, no, pull away from linking to an exhibit and just link to the finding aid. Great question. And yes, it turns out that reviewers like Jody and like me, we have a lot of editorial rights behind the scenes, and we can make changes for you if it's too complicated to keep pushing the discussion backwards and back and forth with your reviewer. The reviewer can simply make those changes by virtue of our knowledge as SNACSchool instructors. Okay, I am watching the time, and I have one. I want to finish the corporate body example because we have the subordinate name example, and let me get back to sharing my screen. What I want to do is, of course, pardon the quick scroll. We've done SNAC record review. And again, I'm displaying here, when you get the PDFs of these modules, I'm not saying print them out. That's very old school, though. I will admit that that's exactly what Jerry did, was print them out so I can read them more clearly. And keep them handy, or just keep them in the PDF open or an extra tab, and use this as a step-by-step explanation and tutorial, I guess, for going through it on your own. Subordinate corporate body names. The example we're going to use for this is records of the, why doesn't it say? Oh, the record DIM project records from the Getty Institute, or the Getty Research Institute. These are records produced by the Getty Conservation Institute, but specifically the Field Projects Division. And so on your slides, sorry to hop back to the slides again. Here's the example. Notice that the name of this entity contains one of those words that signals to us that we should be making a subordinate name entry for the entity. Oops, pardon me. I'm sorry to move so quickly. There's a snip out of the finding aid, and on the right-hand side of the screen of the slide, you'll see the way that we enter those elements differently a bit in the SNAC record. I'm going to go back to SNAC, go away back to my, as we always do, Getty, we look for the name. We have Getty conveniently there as the higher level, but Field Projects Division. And it says no results found. We can also do a browse search. and we get as far as finding the Getty Conservation Institute, which is fine. That's the higher level corporate body, but we have records created specifically by the field projects division. So we want to go through the steps to create that subordinate name. I'll go back to my dashboard, click Create New Constellation. Again, we'll designate the entity type as corporate body, and we'll move down into our name components. Add the name. Let's see, I've been doing this a bit, so it's got some stuff already here. Conservation Institute. And then add component, subdivision name. You have to scroll down a little bit in your component parts here. It's at the bottom, subdivision name, field projects division. Notice that I did not add punctuation here at the end of institute. SNAC adds that subordinate punctuation for you. Those of you familiar with doing corporate body subdivided names know that there's that ever important period space between your elements in the authority record. This is going to be our preferred. It is in English, Latin as always here for these, not always, but you know what I mean. This is the authorized form. And again, it's in RDA. Scroll back up, click continue to let it do the reconciliation. You will see that it finds quite a bit. Again, this is doing a search of the system based on keywords. So you're going to find every possible iteration of Getty, Research, and Institute, perhaps even some with division. There's even one from Maryland. It's finding this because of the word conservation. And then we determined that it is not in here, not on this list. So we create new constellation. And then we're back at the basic interface for creating the record. My research tells me that there are no variant names for this particular corporate entity, so we're not going to add any variants. We do, however, go through the steps of everything else that we've done. Sorry. If you're looking for if it's time to do the history, the biography, all that good stuff, exist dates, places, you fill these elements in just as you did for any other corporate body entered directly, like the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory, and you carry it through right to the end, completing your sources and then sending for review. Are there any questions about adding subordinate names? So at this point, I think I would like to pause everything and take that break that we promised before I go on to do person names,